The Galactic Council chamber had seen many crises in its 3,000-year history. Plagues, economic collapses. At one time, the Ventari accidentally declared war on themselves due to a translation error. But nothing, absolutely nothing, compared to the sheer chaos happening right now. We must surrender. Ambassador Thelvin's voice cracked as he flapped his iridescent wings, his bird-like frame trembling. The Krill have weapons that can crack planets like eggs. They have ships that blot out suns. They have you wetting your feathers, apparently. Commander Breck growled, his scaled face twisted in disgust. The lizard-like warrior slammed a clawed fist on the table. We are not cowards. We fight. With what? Thelvin shrieked. They destroyed the Outer Rim defensive fleet in 47 minutes. 47! Some of us take longer than that to metabolize lunch. High Chancellor Moop, whose gelatinous form rippled with bureaucratic anxiety, raised several tentacle-like appendages. Please, please, we must follow proper protocols. Section 43, subsection 9 clearly states that any surrender must be filed in triplicate with the Committee of Capitulation, which requires a 6-month review period. We will all be dead in 6 months, Thelvin screamed. In the corner of the chamber, General Marcus Webb of the Terran Defense Force sat quietly, eating a ham sandwich. He had learned over the past 3 years of galactic service that most alien species handled stress by arguing loudly about nothing productive. Humans, on the other hand, handled stress by consuming comfort food and waiting for everyone else to tire themselves out. General Webb. Thelvin whirled on him, feathers ruffled in every direction. You have been silent. Surely you have an opinion on our imminent extinction. Webb swallowed his bite of sandwich, took a sip of coffee from his thermos, and shrugged. Not really my call, Thelvin. You folks are the council. I just sit here looking intimidating and occasionally reminding everyone that Earth has a non-aggression pact with the Krill. Because you are too primitive for them to bother with, Breck snarled. Yeah, we get that a lot, Webb said, completely unbothered. Still alive, though. Moop's form quivered. Perhaps we should discuss the terms of total capitulation. If we offer them everything, they might let some of us live as servants. The chamber doors exploded open. Not literally exploded, that would come later in humanity's galactic career. But they slammed open with enough force that Thelvin actually shrieked and tried to hide behind Breck. Captain Jamie Reeves stood in the doorway, covered in mud, sporting what looked like plasma burns on her combat armor, her dark hair escaping from a messy bun, and carrying something wrapped in medical blankets. Sorry to interrupt, Jamie said, her voice dripping with a sarcasm that could strip paint. I know you are all very busy discussing surrender and protocols and probably whose fault everything is, but I have a slight situation. Webb set down his sandwich. Reeves, you look terrible. Thank you, sir, that is exactly what every woman wants to hear. Jamie limped into the chamber. I was running field medical support near the contested zone on Helix 4 when I found something interesting. The bundle in her arms shifted and made a chittering noise. Thelvin's eyes, all 3 of them, went wide. Is that what I think it is? Depends, Jamie said, walking to the center of the chamber. If you think it is 6 Krill infants that were left to die in an abandoned forward base, then congratulations, you win the prize. The chamber erupted. Krill infants? How did you? Is this a trap? Section 92 clearly states, everyone shut up. Jamie's voice cut through the chaos like a plasma blade. The room went silent. She gently adjusted the blankets, revealing what looked like tiny, chitinous creatures with too many legs and compound eyes. They looked like a mixture between a praying mantis and someone's nightmare, except they were small, vulnerable, and making soft chirping sounds. Found them 3 hours ago, Jamie continued, her voice tight. Their base was abandoned, probably pulled back for strategic reasons. These 6 were left behind in what I can only describe as a trash heap. They were dehydrated, malnourished, and about 4 hours from death. So I did what any medic would do. I stabilized them and brought them here. Breck leaned forward, his eyes narrowed. You brought enemy combatants to the council chamber. I brought babies, you overgrown gecko. Jamie's glare could have melted hull plating. Babies that your enemy left to die, which, for the record, tells us something important about krill culture that maybe we should have figured out before losing our minds about surrender. Webb stood up, his sandwich abandoned. He moved to Jamie's side and looked at the infants. One of them reached a tiny claw toward his finger and he let it grab on. Reeves makes a good point. She makes an insane point. Thelvin fluttered his wings anxiously. Those are krill, killing machines, destroyers of worlds. These ones are about 9 inches long and weigh less than a cantaloupe, Jamie said flatly. I am terrified. Moop's form shifted through several colors which Webb had learned meant the Chancellor was deeply confused. Captain Reeves, while I appreciate your medical instincts, this presents a significant diplomatic problem. We are potentially at war with their species. Having their offspring here could be considered an act of hostage-taking. Jamie stared at Moop for a long moment. Did you just suggest that rescuing dying infants from a pile of garbage is hostage-taking? Well, not in those words exactly. Because that is what I heard. I heard you say that providing medical care to non-combatants is somehow a war crime. Jamie's voice was getting dangerously quiet, which Webb recognized as a bad sign. Let me explain something to you, Chancellor. On Earth, we have this thing called basic humanity. Crazy concept, I know. It means that when you find helpless beings dying, you help them. You do not leave them to die because their parents happen to be on the other side of a conflict. One of the infants started making a distressed chirping sound. Jamie immediately shifted the bundle, rocking gently while making soft shushing sounds. The infant quieted. Breck watched this with clear confusion. Your species bonds with enemy young? My species bonds with literally anything that looks sad enough, Jamie said. We domesticated wolves. We keep fish as pets. There is a human on Sector 7 who has befriended a gelatinous blob that communicates through color changes and mostly talks about tax policy. We will pack bond with a rock if it has googly eyes on it. I have heard this about humans, Thelvin said slowly. You adopt everything. We adopt everything, Webb confirmed. It is both our greatest strength and our most annoying trait, according to the last Galactic Cultural Assessment report. Jamie shot him a look. Sir, are you helping or not? I am always helping, Captain. I am just also enjoying watching the Council realize that humanity's weird compassion thing is about to become their problem. Webb turned to the assembled aliens. Here's the situation, folks. Captain Reeves has 6 krill infants. They require care. The question is, what do we do about it? The question hung in the air like a grenade with a pulled pin. Thelvin was the first to speak, his voice pitching high with panic. We cannot keep them. What if they are some sort of trap? What if they grow up and kill us all? They are babies, Jamie said, her patience clearly wearing thinner than hull plating in a meteor storm. They eat, sleep, and excrete waste. That is literally their entire skill set right now. But they are krill babies, Thelvin insisted. They will become soldiers, killers, world enders. So was I, technically, Webb pointed out. Human infants grow up to be all sorts of things. Soldiers, sure, but also artists, teachers, scientists, and people who argue about sandwich toppings on the galactic net for hours. What matters is how you raise them. Breck leaned back in his seat, his tail swishing with agitation. The general has a point, but it does not solve our problem. We are discussing whether to surrender to the Krill Empire. Having their offspring here could be seen as leverage. Leverage, Jamie repeated, her voice flat. You want to use babies as leverage. It is strategically sound. It is morally bankrupt, you walking luggage. Jamie's voice echoed off the chamber walls. Listen to yourselves. 5 minutes ago you were ready to surrender to these people. Now you want to use their infants as bargaining chips. Pick a lane. Moop rippled uncertainly. Captain Reeves, I understand your emotional response, but we must consider all options. However, there is also the matter of proper documentation. Do we classify them as prisoners of war, refugees, unaccompanied minors? The forms alone would take weeks to process properly. Or, Webb said calmly, we could stop overthinking this and actually learn something useful. Captain, you said you found them in a garbage heap. Explain krill biology to these fine people. Jamie took a breath, visibly collecting herself. Right. So, krill are R-selected reproducers. They lay large clutches of eggs, and only the strongest hatchlings survive. The krill do not raise their young so much as they let them fight for resources until the toughest ones win. It is brutal natural selection baked into their culture. That is barbaric, Thelvin whispered. That is nature on a harsh world, Webb corrected. Earth had species that worked the same way. Still does, actually. The difference is that the krill never moved past it. They built a starfaring civilization, but they kept the survival of the fittest mentality for their own offspring. One of the infants in Jamie's arms made a soft sound, and she adjusted the blanket to keep it warm. The gesture was so automatic, so gentle, that it created a stark contrast with the discussion happening around her. So they just abandoned their weak young? Breck sounded somewhere between horrified and impressed. And you, human, decided to intervene? Yes, Jamie said simply. Because leaving helpless beings to die when I can prevent it is not something I am capable of. Call it a character flaw. It is not a flaw, Moop said quietly, several of his tentacles drooping. It is simply very alien to most of us. Most species do not interfere with other species' offspring, Thelvin added, though his tone was less panicked now. It is considered a violation of cultural norms. Human cultural norms say that babies do not deserve to die for being born weak, Jamie shot back. And before anyone says it, no, I do not care if that makes us weird. I am fine with being the weird species that has a problem with infant mortality. Webb pulled up a holographic display from his wristcom. I have been reviewing intelligence reports while you all argued. The krill do not value their young until they have proven themselves in combat. Usually around their equivalent of adolescence, these infants. He gestured to Jamie's bundle. According to krill culture, they are already written off as failures. They were left behind deliberately. Then they will not want them back, Breck said slowly. Which means they are not leverage at all. Exactly, Webb confirmed. But they are something else. They are an opportunity. The council members looked at each other in confusion. Jamie shifted the weight of the infants, wincing slightly as her injured leg protested. Sir, I appreciate the support, but I really need to get these little ones somewhere with proper medical facilities. Also, I think I might have a concussion. Everything is a bit sparkly around the edges. Noted, Captain. Give me 30 more seconds. Webb turned to the council. Here's my proposal. We keep these infants safe. We provide medical care, proper nutrition, everything they need, and we use them to open a dialogue with the krill. They will not care about discarded offspring, Thelvin objected. Webb smiled. It was not a nice smile. Maybe not, but they are going to be very, very confused about why we do care. And confusion, my feathered friend, is the first step toward negotiation. Jamie set the bundle of infants carefully on the council table, and several members immediately scooted back as if the babies might explode. She began checking each one, her hands moving with practiced efficiency despite her obvious exhaustion. You know what Earth's problem was for most of its history? Jamie did not look up from her examination. We were really, really good at war. Terrifyingly good. We came up with new and exciting ways to kill each other basically every generation. Swords, guns, bombs. Weapons that could end civilizations. This is not helping your argument for compassion, Thelvin muttered. I am getting there, hold your feathers. Jamie moved to the second infant, gently manipulating its limbs to check for injuries. The thing is, even at our worst, even during conflicts that killed millions, we had rules. Unwritten at first, then written down in what we called the Geneva Conventions, though really they should have been called the list of things you do not do if you want to sleep at night. Webb nodded. Non-combatant protection, treatment of prisoners, medical neutrality, the rules of war. Rules of war, Breck repeated. That sounds contradictory. It is contradictory, Jamie agreed. War is chaos and death and horror. But humans decided that even in chaos, even in horror, there were lines you did not cross. You did not target hospitals. You did not torture prisoners. You did not harm children. Because the moment you did those things, you stopped being a soldier and became a monster. She finished examining the third infant and moved to the fourth. We learned this the hard way through centuries of mistakes and atrocities and regret. We learned that how you treat your enemies, especially the helpless ones, defines who you are more than how you treat your friends. Moop's form had gone still, which Webb knew meant the Chancellor was thinking deeply. But Captain, these are not human children. They are Krill, your enemy. They are children, Jamie said firmly. Full stop. End of sentence. Their species, their origin, their potential future allegiances, none of that matters when they are this small and this helpless. What matters is that they need help, and I can provide it. Everything else is just noise. That is a very human perspective, Thelvin said softly. Yes, it is. Webb stepped forward. Let me explain something about humans that the rest of the galaxy seems to have trouble understanding. We pack bond. It is hardwired into our psychology. We took wolves, literal predators that hunted us, and we turned them into dogs. We befriended horses and rode them into battle. We keep tiny reptiles in glass boxes and give them names. We get emotionally attached to cleaning robots. There was that incident with the Mars rover, Jamie added. Entire planet mourned when it stopped transmitting. People wrote songs about a robot. Exactly. Webb gestured to the infants. So, when you show a human something small and helpless, our brains do not care about species or politics or military strategy. Our brains say, that thing needs protection, and we are going to provide it. We cannot help it. It is how we are built. Breck leaned forward, studying the infants with new interest. This pack-bonding instinct, it has helped your species survive? It built our civilization, Webb said. Humans are not the strongest species on Earth. We are not the fastest or the most naturally armed. We survived because we worked together. We formed groups, tribes, nations. We protected each other, especially the weak. A human alone is vulnerable. Humans together are unstoppable. And you extend this protection to other species, Moop said slowly. Even enemy species. Especially enemy species, Jamie said. She had finished her examination and was now just gently holding one of the infants, which had wrapped its tiny claws around her finger. Because showing mercy to someone who cannot fight back is not weakness. It is the definition of strength. Any fool can kill. It takes actual courage to protect. The chamber was quiet except for the soft chittering of the infants. Thelvin cleared his throat. I begin to understand why Earth has never lost a war despite being technologically inferior to most opponents. We win because we are stubborn, Webb said, and because we refuse to compromise on certain principles. Protecting non-combatants is one of those principles. It does not matter if it is strategically inconvenient. It does not matter if it makes negotiations harder. It matters that when we look at ourselves in the mirror, we recognize who we see. Jamie nodded, then swayed slightly. Webb moved to steady her. Captain, you're about 5 minutes from passing out. Concussions are fun like that, sir. Jamie's words were starting to slur slightly. But I need to know these little ones are going to be safe before I let the medical staff knock me out with the good drugs. Webb looked at the council. So here is my proposal, and it is not actually a proposal because I am doing it regardless of what you say. These infants go to the Terran medical facility. Captain Reeves supervises their care. We document everything and prepare a full report for the Krill Empire, showing exactly how we have treated their abandoned offspring. And then what? Breck asked. And then we find out if the Krill are capable of learning something new, Webb said. We show them that there is another way, that you can value your weak. That compassion is not the same as weakness. Maybe they laugh at us, maybe they attack us anyway, but maybe, just maybe, we plant a seed of change. You want to teach the Krill Empire to be more human, Moop said, sounding amazed. I want to stop a war, Webb corrected. And sometimes the best way to stop a war is to confuse the hell out of your enemy by doing something completely unexpected, like adopting their babies. It took 6 hours to get Jamie to medical, get the infants settled in a proper care facility, and convince the council to not make any rash decisions while Webb pursued his insane plan. He was in the Terran facility's observation room, watching Jamie sleep off her concussion in one bed while the 6 krill infants chirped and wriggled in specialized incubators nearby. When the communication came through, the console beeped urgently. Webb glanced at the readout and felt his stomach drop. Incoming transmission. Krill Empire. War Matron Scrix, Supreme Commander of the Forward Assault Fleet. This was either going to go very well or very, very badly. Webb accepted the transmission. The holographic display flickered to life, showing a massive krill warrior. She was easily 7 feet tall, covered in chitinous armor that looked both biological and technological, with compound eyes that glittered with cold intelligence. Her mandibles clicked as she focused on Webb. Human General. Her voice came through the translator with a harsh, staccato quality. I am War Matron Scrix. You have something that confuses me. Not the opening Webb expected. Ma'am, I am General Marcus Webb of the Terran Defense Force. I assume you are referring to the 6 infants we recovered from your abandoned forward base on Helix 4? The War Matron's head tilted in a distinctly insect-like manner. Recovered. An interesting choice of words. We call it culling. The weak are removed from the brood so they do not consume resources needed by the strong. We call it abandoning helpless children to die, Webb said, keeping his voice level. Different cultural perspectives. Indeed. Scrix's mandibles clicked rapidly, which the translator helpfully noted meant confusion or agitation. My scouts reported that a human medic retrieved the discards and brought them to your medical facility. They have been fed, warmed, and treated for minor ailments. This makes no tactical sense. It makes perfect sense if you are human. Explain. Webb pulled up the medical facility's feed on a secondary screen. Jamie was still unconscious, but the infants were visible in their incubators, being tended by human medical staff who were treating them with the same care they would give any patient. War Matron, on Earth we have a saying, judge a society not by how it treats its strongest members, but by how it treats its weakest. Those infants were weak by your standards, they would have died. My medic could not allow that to happen. Why? The question was simple, but it carried genuine confusion. They are not her offspring. They are not even her species. They are, by your own military designations, enemy combatants in training. They are babies, Webb said. That is all that mattered to Captain Reeves. Their species, their origin, their future allegiance, none of that changed the fact that they were dying and she could save them. There was a long pause. Scrix's head moved slightly, and Webb could hear clicking sounds in the background. She was consulting with others. We do not have a word in our language for this behavior, Scrix said finally. The closest translation would be tactical weakness or irrational resource distribution. We call it compassion, Webb said. And before you dismiss it as weakness, let me point out that humans conquered their entire planet, developed nuclear weapons, and reached spaceflight, all while maintaining this so-called weakness. It has not held us back. More clicking sounds. Then Scrix leaned closer to her display, her compound eyes filling the screen. You treat our discards as if they have value. They do have value, Webb said firmly. Every life has value. That is the foundation of human ethics. Even enemy lives? Especially enemy lives, because how we treat our enemies when they cannot fight back tells us who we really are. Jamie stirred in her bed, mumbling something about proper feeding schedules before falling back asleep. One of the infants responded to her voice with a chirp. Scrix noticed. The medic has bonded with them. Probably, Webb admitted. Humans bond with everything. It is a problem. We have support groups for people who get too attached to their spacecraft. This is insane, Scrix said. But there was something different in her tone now. Something that was not quite anger. We left them to die because they were weak. You saved them because they were weak. These are opposite reactions to the same situation. Yes, Webb agreed. And that is exactly why I wanted to speak with you. War Matron Scrix, your empire is expanding, conquering, fighting, Because that is what your culture understands. Survival of the fittest, strength through conflict, culling the weak. It has worked for you, but it requires constant warfare, constant expansion, constant loss. That is the nature of the universe. It is the nature of your universe, Webb corrected. But what if there was another way? What if you could be strong without needing to constantly prove it? What if your weak could become strong with help instead of being discarded? You propose we become soft like you? I propose you become smart like us. Webb gestured to the infants. Those 6 right there. By your standards, they are failures, waste. By our standards, they are potential. Maybe one becomes a scientist. Maybe one becomes an artist. Maybe one stays weak their entire life but contributes something no warrior ever could. You will never know because you did not give them a chance. Scrix went very still. You want to keep them. We want to save them, Webb said. And then we want to talk to you about why we saved them. Not as leverage, not as hostages, but as an example. An example that there is another path. That you do not have to be at war with the galaxy. That strength can come from protecting the weak, instead of culling them. The war matron's clicking intensified. She turned away from the screen, and Webb could see her speaking rapidly to other krill in the background. The conversation seemed heated. Finally, she turned back. General Webb of Earth, you have done something no species has ever done. You have confused the Krill Empire. We came to conquer. We expected resistance or surrender. We did not expect adoption. To be fair, we did not expect to adopt your babies today either, Webb said. It just sort of happened. We are spontaneous like that. I propose a ceasefire, Scrix said abruptly. 30 solar cycles. During this time, we will observe how you raise our discards. We will send representatives to learn about your culture, your values, this compassion you speak of. If we find value in your methods, we will negotiate. If we do not, we resume conquest. Webb felt his heart rate spike but kept his expression neutral. That is acceptable. I will coordinate with the Galactic Council to formalize the terms. And General, if any harm comes to those offspring, if we detect any attempt to use them as leverage or weapons, the ceasefire ends immediately. Understood, War Matron. But I can promise you, the only danger they face is being spoiled rotten by human medical staff who have already started knitting them tiny sweaters. Scrix's mandibles clicked in what might have been confusion or amusement. Tiny sweaters? You will see, Webb said. Welcome to humanity's weird compassion thing. It is about to become everyone's problem. The Galactic Council chamber was significantly calmer than it had been 12 hours earlier, though Thelvin's feathers were still ruffled, and Moop had not stopped rippling anxiously since Webb delivered the news. Let me understand this correctly, Thelvin said slowly. The Krill Empire, the most feared military force in 3 sectors, has agreed to a ceasefire because we rescued their babies? Because we confused them, Webb corrected. The ceasefire buys us time to show them an alternative to constant warfare. It is not peace yet, but it is a start. This is unprecedented, Moop said, tentacles waving. I need to create entirely new forms for this situation. Cross-species adoption agreements, cultural exchange protocols, ceasefire documentation. You do that, Chancellor, Webb said. In the meantime, I need to check on Captain Reeves and make sure she has not already taught the infants to play poker. He was joking, but when he reached the medical facility, he found Jamie awake and sitting next to the incubators, talking softly to the infants while showing them images on her data pad. Captain, you are supposed to be resting. I am resting, sir. I am just resting while providing developmental stimulation. Jamie did not look up from the data pad. Did you know krill hatchlings can recognize patterns at only 3 days old? They are actually pretty smart when you give them a chance. Webb sat down next to her. War Matron Scrix was very confused by your actions. Good. Confusion is better than conquest. Jamie finally looked at him. Did you really get a ceasefire? 30 solar cycles. They want to observe how we raise the infants, learn about human culture, maybe figure out why we do what we do. And if they decide our way is stupid, then we are probably at war again, Webb admitted. But at least we tried, and at least these 6 get a chance at life. One of the infants reached a tiny claw toward Jamie, and she gently let it grip her finger. The gesture was already familiar, already routine. You know Scrix is going to hold you personally responsible for these little ones, Webb said. Yep, and the council is probably going to make you some sort of official liaison. I assumed. And you have essentially adopted 6 alien babies that may grow up to be 7-foot-tall warriors with mandibles. I'm aware, sir. Webb smiled. Just making sure you thought this through. I did not think anything through. I just did what needed doing. Jamie looked at the infants, her expression softening. You know what the real problem is going to be? What? Naming them. I cannot keep calling them Infant 1 through Infant 6. That is depressing. You are naming them? Of course I am naming them. They are mine now. Well, technically they belong to the Krill Empire, but I am doing the raising, so I get naming rights. I think the little one with the darker chitin is going to be Biscuit. You are naming a potentially lethal alien warrior Biscuit. I am naming a baby who likes being held and makes cute chirping sounds Biscuit, Jamie corrected. What they become later is up to them, and hopefully up to a culture that learns to value them. Webb stood up, stretching. I need to go brief Earth Command. They are going to have very strong opinions about this whole situation. Tell them we need more medical staff and possibly social workers, and definitely someone who knows about interspecies childhood development, because I am making this up as I go. Will do, Captain. Webb paused at the door. For what it is worth, you did good today. You may have just prevented a war by being too stubborn to let babies die. That is going in my performance review, right? Prevented galactic war through aggressive compassion and refusal to follow common sense? That is exactly how I am phrasing it. After Webb left, Jamie sat quietly with the infants. Medical staff technician Rodriguez came by with feeding supplies, and Jamie noticed she was knitting something small and green. Rodriguez, is that a sweater? Rodriguez said cheerfully. The little ones need to stay warm. I am making 6. Different colors so we can tell them apart. You know they are Krill, right? Enemy combatants in training. They are babies in my medical bay, Rodriguez said firmly. Therefore they get sweaters. Rules are rules, Captain. Jamie started laughing and could not stop. Rodriguez looked concerned until Jamie managed to gasp out, We are going to end a war with knitwear. Ma'am, we are going to end a war with compassion. The knitwear is just a bonus. 3 weeks later, when the Krill delegation arrived for the first cultural exchange meeting, they found 6 thriving infants wearing tiny, colorful sweaters, being doted on by a rotating staff of humans who had all claimed some version of aunt or uncle status. War Matron Scrix stared at the scene for a full minute before speaking. This is not what I expected. What did you expect? Jamie asked, gently rocking Biscuit, who was the clingy one. Military efficiency, cold professionalism, strategic positioning of resources. Yeah, we tried that once on Earth, Jamie said. Turns out raising kids with love and attention works better than treating them like tiny soldiers. Who knew? Scrix watched as Rodriguez taught one of the other Krill representatives how to properly burp an infant. The warrior looked confused but was following instructions carefully. Your species is insane, Scrix said finally. Absolutely, Jamie agreed. But we are insane in a way that keeps babies alive and happy. And you know what? That is a type of insanity I can live with. By the end of the 30-day ceasefire, the Krill Empire had not withdrawn their forces, but they had not advanced either. They had, however, sent 17 more of their discarded offspring to the Terran medical facility, with a formal request that they be raised with the same care as the first 6. The Galactic Council officially designated Jamie Reeves as humanity's first interspecies child development specialist and diplomatic liaison, a title she insisted was ridiculous but secretly loved. Earth Command updated their official reports on the conflict with the Krill Empire. The final line of the report read, Status: Ceasefire achieved through adoption protocols. Recommend sending additional medical staff and approximately 3,000 more sweaters. And somewhere in the medical facility, 6 Krill infants who should have died learning to play peekaboo with a medic who had decided that today was not a good day for anyone to die, enemy or not. Humanity's reputation in the galaxy was updated accordingly. The species that ended a war with adoption papers and knitwear. Weird? Absolutely. Effective? The peaceful integration of the Krill Empire into the Galactic Council 3 years later suggested yes. But the real victory was simpler than that. It was 6 lives saved, 6 chances given, 6 beings who would grow up knowing that someone somewhere had looked at them when they were at their weakest and decided they were worth saving. And that, as every human knew, was what made all the difference.